Right, welcome everybody to another edition of Influence, the global podcast and a video recording that we're making today. I'm really excited today because we're going to be talking about gaming, and gaming is huge. Um, it's estimated to be worth something like about 110 billion pounds by 2022. And although we obviously talk about influencer marketing on this podcast, it's that's around 11 billion. And obviously all sorts of people are gamers. And I want to really talk about this in detail with two amazing individuals. First of all, I'd love to introduce Kelvin Cery, who's the VP of Client Development and Brand Partnerships Europe at Ben Entertainment. Hi, Kelvin.
Hey Gordon, thanks for inviting me on today.
Lovely to see you. And also Jonathan Dodd, who's the Manager of Global Creator Partnerships at EA, Electronic Arts. Lovely
G'day,
to see
Gordon.
you too.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm excited to have a conversation with you all.
Great. So let's talk, Kelvin, first of all. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do at Ben.
Okay, so in terms of influencer marketing, we've been working in the space for over 10 years. We essentially work to connect brands to their audiences via the power of influencers. Unusually in the space, when we set out, we didn't set out to represent the creator community. We were focused solely upon representing the brands in the space, and that's where we've kind of built our success over the years. To the extent that we're headquartered in LA in the US. I'm heading, as you've said, the European region. We've got offices in Shanghai, so we truly are a global organization, working with clients, big and small alike, but able to execute truly on a global scale.
Yeah, super. And Jonathan, lovely to see you here today. I'm particularly interested in what you guys are doing at the moment around, particularly artificial intelligence. We've seen some amazing trends here. What are some of the things that you've noticed, particularly in the gaming landscape?
I mean, when it comes to the gaming landscape is incredibly interesting, I think. When you look at a lot of the things that have shaped us, like gaming, the work that we do with influencers, and especially accelerated over the past 12 months as more people have been spending time at home and digitally connecting with each other. People have really come out of their shell, I find, in terms of how they affiliate themselves with gaming, but also how they connect with others. I know EA as an example, and a lot of other companies in the gaming space have seen such a substantial growth in the amount of people that are playing our games, but also using them to speak with each other, spend time with each other, because now that, in the times that we're living in, it's harder for individuals to actually spend physical time together. And so they look to platforms like playing multiplayer games or just hanging out on different social networks to connect with each other and do things collaboratively and just, chat about whatever's going on in their days, catch up with friends they haven't spoken about, and all that sort of stuff. So gaming has been a really fascinating social experience for people over the past 12 months. And I think that's the most, to me, it's the coolest trend that's really been going on in the past while.
Yeah, and we were just talking earlier, weren't we, Kelvin, about Candy Crush. Gaming is not just about this perception of people, techno guys that are in hideaway rooms and stuff like that. So many people now, and particularly over the last 12 months, have explored more exciting ways to engage and communicate, which I've been, really amazed at. What sort of other things have you noticed, Kelvin?
Yeah, so I think there's still an element of misperception about the gaming community at large, particularly amongst older generations, where it's seen as still being a little bit basement. But people are breaking out of that mindset now. I'm a parent, there is a distinct rise in the gamer parent as a culture, and we're advocates for gaming. That we don't think gaming is evil. We see the benefits it brings to kids, and in terms of creativity, in terms of the community aspect, you know, and in terms of their cognitive decision making, that kind of stuff. So, you know, I think that in itself is a trend. But, you know, reflecting on what you were saying about, you know, what is gaming, you know, it's not all about console gaming as most people would probably think about it in its hardcore sense, or in terms of, you know, PC gaming in an even more hardcore sense. But it can be much broader than that. You know, it's about playing games on mobiles, and to that extent, you know, you have to forget about this being a very young male-led industry. You know, there is a broad base of people that you can connect with. But, you know, just touching on what Jador was saying there, you know, games aren't just games. I see games as being the playgrounds of the future. You know, they provide multi-layered social experiences, interaction opportunities. They play, basically it's a sandbox space where communities can gather, where they can co-create with friends, or even with people that they don't know. And, you know, to me, there's such an exciting opportunity here for brands to get involved in this interactive space. And if they're thinking smart, they can find ways of empowering and bringing those experiences to life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I was looking at a stat here which suggested that by 2023, there will be over 3 billion people that were deemed gamers. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it?
If you just think of the penetration of the mobile market, you know, you look at China, you look at India, and the scale of those economies and the populations there, you know, everybody's on smartphones these days. That means immediately you've got a route to becoming a gamer, you know. So it doesn't surprise me with those kind of figures are bandied about. And for me, I just see this as an industry that's going to continue to grow. And as Ben, we are very much positioned, you know, at the heart of that creator community, to fuel that growth and to kind of facilitate the creation of art, but supported by great tech, and making sure that brands are able to have a voice in that space.
Yeah, I'm guessing that tech has been advancing all of the time because of the element of competition. I mean, are you seeing that, Jonathan?
I mean, I think it's definitely things have accelerated for us in the past couple months, in this past 12 months. Like, we are definitely looking at how we can engage with our players, and also how we can engage with our creators on a digital basis a lot more. For a lot of the companies, we had, like, when we were talking about engagement with press, when we're talking about engagement with creators, when initially announcing games, or even at the point of launching games, we heavily were focused on a lot of physical activations with people. We were inviting people down to studios to play the game, to meet the developers, to engage early in a safe environment that allowed people this equal opportunity to play our games. But now, like, we are like really having to pivot to an idea of how we're recreating that safe environment for people just in a digital environment. How we allowing people to play our games early, how we allowing more people to touch our games from the safety of their own home. We've had a few road bumps here and there, but that's just the evolution of technology. Cool. But funnily enough, what we've actually noticed is that it actually gives us much more of an opportunity to engage a wider audience as well. Because while I personally love the idea of getting together with everyone and just chatting it out in a physical space, I know that that's not necessarily the options for a lot of people. And so what that means for us is that we now get to just speak with so many more people and allow so many more people to be a part of like our creator experience, and enjoy what we're really proud of putting out in the world. And that's like fun as hell, entertaining games.
Yeah, no, that's wicked. That's wicked. Now tell us about the influencer engagement, because I know that you both have collaborated on the launch of Apex Legends, haven't you? Which I believe was 100% influencer event. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can happily. I should probably let this go as a preface, but I actually was a bystander in a lot of that work, but I worked incredibly closely with people, and I'm happy to tell the story of it
Okay,
on
that's
their
good.
behalf. There were some incredible people that did a work on that. Yeah, so the reveal of Apex was a really fascinating thing for us. It was a time where the strategy that we were working towards with the reveal of the game, which, like you said, was basically a creator-driven event. There was no media funding behind it. We hadn't even announced the game when we were actually ready to launch it. And so it was something that really, in the eyes of the industry, was unprecedented for everyone. A lot of gaming releases, a lot of gaming reveals, they have a traditional loop of reveal, gameplay, activation, some sort of tie into perhaps a larger industry event, and then launch at a specific time, and then you have your things that go on there. We just bypassed that. But the time was a really interesting thing, though, because when we were ready to announce it, we were basically going up against the Super Bowl as well. And so we had this big confluence of conversation that was happening at the time as well. And we were like, okay, let's just bring everyone down to the studio in LA at Respawn, where they're based. I think it was at least 60 influencers that we brought together, press as well, get them all to play the game, get them all excited, show it. What was the 72 to 96 hour embargo, I believe it was, and then basically as soon as that embargo lifts on that content, game is available worldwide for people to play. And that was and in the eyes of so many people, that was one of, if not one of the more revolutionary types of video games marketing that we've done in a very long time. We had nearly 500,000 people tune in concurrently to watch the reveal and watch all these creators play the game. We had, what was it, 500 million minutes watched of just one game in 24 hours, which we were just absolutely blown away by.
Goodness.
And really it, and like, for me, one of the things that I always think about, like, what is a signal of great work? It's how many people are inspired to do that stuff, do the same stuff that we did, or even do their own spin on it. And we've seen that in a couple of other releases since. And like, to me, it really shows that people were inspired by what we did, and they went, how can we do our version of that? Because we know that that studio did an amazing job revealing that, and they left an impact on people's memories. How do we do our version of that? How do we put a spin on that? And how do we do the next Apex reveal? And like, that's a really amazing thing to think of.
So when you talk about the reveal, I mean, what was particularly unique about that reveal as opposed to others, would you say?
I think for us, it was like you said, there was no media. It was a purely creator, purely press driven, or like I won't say necessarily organic, sorry, because that would imply it's something different. But it was a purely creator and press driven event. Like, it was word of mouth. It was driven through the eyes of people who play
Relatable, so
our
totally
games.
relatable. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest thing. And that's the biggest advantage about working with creators, is that they have this authenticity, this individual voice that carries to their audience, because they've developed that sort of parasocial relationship over the years of these people. And when they say something is amazing, which we knew Apex was, because when you understand the pedigree of Respawn, they're a company that even before they were Respawn, they've revolutionized, again, first person shooters like 2 to 3 times now. They have some of the most iconic franchises under their belt. And so when you have that information, and then you couple that with people that audiences, like millions of viewers watch, and they trust the opinions of these people, you go, that's just a recipe for success. And lo and behold, the numbers spoke for themselves at that time. And now Apex is far and away one of the most popular battle royales out there in the industry, and it's a continual high performer on Twitch and on YouTube as well. And it's just, I mean, of course, it's an incredible, like, first person shooter as well, incredible battle royale. I'll play that every weekend as well. But yeah, it's just this amazing combination of just great work all around.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating to see how successful some of these content creators are. I mean, I'm always blown away by brands that don't give so much directive to content creators, but they allow them the freedom to do it in such a way that's authentic to their community. Because although they're all gamers, I'm guessing they've all got their own little slight niches or manners. And I just wondered if there were if in the way that they were creating this content, whether you found out some amazing learnings that you said, oh, I love the way that that person did that, or I love the way that that person did that, because when you're using a whole bunch of guys and girls together, you're never going to get the same score across all. You're going to get different reactions, aren't you? And I just wondered if there were any particular wow moments. Obviously the results were astounding, of course.
Yeah.
But were there anything that came out of the content creation that you thought, that's a real good...
Honestly, you hit the nail on the head like before. It's like what you want is different opinions, and what you want are different voices and different things being said. Because at the end of the day, when like that, the beauty of working with creators and the beauty of like allowing creators to put their own spin on stuff is what is their specialty at the end of the day. Like creators themselves, they're not brands really. They are at the end of the day individuals that you could say may have built a brand persona after a while, but at the end of the day, they're an individual voice that is speaking their mind about something. And if you're a brand that's looking to partner with a creator, the last thing you want to do is impose your brand on that individual, because what you're doing at that point, if you're putting too much guidance or putting too much weight on what you think creatively that person should be doing, that creator should be doing, then you're really negating the impact of what they are actually their best at. And that's knowing their audience, that's using their individual voice to talk to people and to storytell. And I just, every now and again, when I see a partnership that I can tell when you go, that thing's been through about 6 reviews because someone has a specific vision. But I can also tell when some partnerships are just incredibly authentic, they feel organic and they feel special. That's because they go, hey, creator X, like we know that what you do is this thing. Here's kind of what we want you to do, but just run with it. And, like whether they have things about don't swear too much, all that kind of crap. But like, at the end of the day, like that's the dream. Let them be themselves, let them use their voice, and let them be excited about the product, and you'll have such a better end result at the end of the day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Kelvin, a lot of these gamers have been around. Of course, gaming is huge in the space, isn't it? And a lot of them, of course, tech savvy. They can smell a phony brand partnership a mile off, can't they?
And I think what Jado is saying there is absolutely spot on. You can't be phony in this space. You're going to get called out very, very easily, particularly in the gaming space. So, the way that we say this, kind of paraphrasing what's already been said, but, we want the creators to sit in the director's chair. We always say that the brand comes to the process with their brand objectives in mind, with key communication points. What is the differentiator of this game or whatever product it may be, maybe what the price point is, where it's available, all those kind of things that you want to communicate. But ultimately, you've got to allow the creators to communicate that to their audience in a way that they recognize. So the style, the tone has to be done to the creator, because otherwise it just feels forced, and also when we're speaking with creators, we want to evaluate their passion for a project as well. The last thing we want is them dialing it in. If they're asking us about money up front, that's a terrible sign for us. We want to know that they've got a passion for it. They're interested in the product or the service, and they want to enthuse about it, and they take their own spin on it and talk about it in their own individual way. When you do that, what you get is something that is genuinely authentic, that isn't disruptive to the audience, and if anything is more empowering of the content and helps to make better content. So to us, that's the secret sauce, where the brand is getting their message across to what ultimately is an often difficult to reach audience. The creator is being empowered to make better content, and the audience themselves are not being disrupted, but actually getting access to better content.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things I'm interested in is that there's more and more non-gaming related brand partnerships being done now, aren't there? And I just wondered, what's your experience of that, Kelvin, of particularly when we look at these stats of a much wider populace that's involved in gaming,
Yeah.
and all sorts of organizations that can now approach the gaming community to communicate their brand values. And what have you picked up there?
So I think 2021 is going to be a pivotal year for non-endemic brands in the gaming space, because I think people are starting to really understand the scale of the opportunity here. I mean, we're seeing it already in terms of people brokering sponsorship arrangements in the gaming space, particularly with esports. Something, you know, there's a lot of sort of advanced partnerships in that kind of space, but people are looking at other ways of connecting with the audience. So we've done work for, I mean, we've done numerous pieces, but a good example would be with Kraken Run, who are not, you know, they're not endemic to the space, but they know that their audience, the audience that drinks rum, the audience they want to speak to, is playing games. So it's about facilitating that conversation with the audience and finding unique ways of them engaging, because ultimately what we're talking about here is usually a demographic set that is very difficult to reach through traditional channels. You know, you look at the consumption of commercial TV, and it's on a very steep decline. They ad block at an exceptionally high rate. So by placing the brand into the content, you know, you're achieving that cut through immediately, and you're able to sort of architect a conversation that feels very, very native. So yeah, I think this year is the big year for that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that fascinates me is how influential some of these communities are. And I've got to bring up the GameStop story, because it did fascinate me, where, you know, a group of individuals together were just not having any of it, were they? But there's actually quite an interesting, for those of you that don't know all about it, there was a few unhappy hedge funds that invested or shorted this stock, didn't they? Of course, it went the other way, much to the delight of the Reddit community. But what it did do is it proved the power of influence amongst these individuals. But on a broader level, what I'm of course fascinated by is how this is impacted on the digital landscape and how people are consuming gaming. What's your thought about that, Jonathan?
I mean, the idea, I mean, we could talk a lot about the democratization of influence, especially through what happened with GameStop and Wall Street Bets. But like the influence of individuals on digital communities and gaming communities, I think it's hard to argue against it now. When you look at a game, when you look at something like what are the most streamed games on Twitch right now, and when you look at who the top streamers are and what they're playing at the moment, more often than not, there's going to be some sort of correlation between what they're playing and what the top sold games are on PC or on console. Right now, there's a game that's massively blowing up on Twitch right now called Valheim, which is a survival game. You build things, you attack enemies, and you play it together with people. And it's a game that's built around really interesting emergent storytelling that happens, and it creates a wonderful viewing experience, because a lot of what happens is surprise, really. You don't know what's happening in the content. And then so that becomes a really entertaining game for people to watch, because they see these creators having a wonderful time playing with it. They're loving it. They're enjoying their time, and they're spending hours and playing into like the wee hours of the morning. And then lo and behold, Valheim, their developers, announced that they sold 4 million copies on PC. And for a small, I think it's a 5-person studio, that's an incredible amount of success and an incredible amount of money for it. When you look at what they've done, like the success of games like Fall Guys or Among Us. Among Us, I think in 2020 or up until, in 2020, I think it had 32 billion views at least on YouTube itself. And it's some of the most popularly played games on Steam. It's available on mobile as well. It's available now on Switch, and I think it's coming to console as well shortly too. But the power of a subset of creators that started playing that game back in September. Among Us was a game that released in 2018, right? And that game didn't blow up until I think it was around XQC, Soda Poppin', and a few others. I apologize to anyone like that might know the right history and this is wrong, but a few people, and then just blowing up like that. And then you've seen from there just the game continue to be successful because you saw a game that's fundamentally about social interaction and about personality against personality. And then people going, I reckon I could do that with my friends, playing it, realizing how much bloody fun it is. And then it's spreading like wildfire. And if anyone sees that and says, still don't believe that, then I don't know what other information you want or what you need to see, because to me, that's just that the proof is in the pudding.
Absolutely. I mean, do you think actually, I mean, I'm sure the stats prove this, but more people have engaged in gaming for the first time during the pandemic, not just because it's a game, but actually because of its social interaction, just as you've just said a few minutes ago. And it allows people to almost escape all of the problems that we've been having. And I've actually realized this is a lot of fun. And I can bring in my friends that aren't even in this room with me, but feel like I'm particularly around mental health, some of the issues that people have been suffering, and gaming has probably been a great a savior. What's your thoughts, Kelvin, on that?
So I think that is absolutely on the money, and I'm going to talk from personal experience here because I've got a son who is a gamer, and he's an only child, and during the last almost year now he's had a lot of restrictions in terms of interactions with his friends. Spent a little time at school, but generally speaking, like physical interaction was halted, right? And the only way he could interact with his friends was generally through digital communication. And for him, the go-to platforms for doing that were games, because he could socialize with his friends. He could do the cooperative kind of things he'd do with his friends as you would in normal physical play. And I think for him, it was a huge outlet, and probably a great boon in terms of helping him with his mental health and having that day-to-day interaction and helping to normalize the situation of the pandemic. So, I think gaming has to be really, really up there in terms of how it's helped the youth over the last 10 to 12 months.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what are the sort of takeaways do you think if I'm a big brand and I'm looking to act, we talked about it briefly a moment ago, but what are the if I was a big brand looking to enter this sector and I'm on the sideline thinking about it, what would your advice be, Kelvin?
My advice is to come into this in a very open-minded way. Don't think that you have all the solutions. Okay, there are experts in the space that can help you to guide you to those solutions. You have to be willing to give up that element of control. Okay, if you come into this thinking that you're going to dictate, you're going to set the agenda, you're going to fall flat in your face. It's not going to work for you. You have to forget about making that advert and that contest. That TVC mindset has to be thrown out the door. And just going back to what we were saying earlier on, it is about authenticity. It's about allowing the creators to create, but placing your brand message in a way that relates to their audience. You can definitely get into the DNA of gaming if you're willing to take that soft approach and trust the experts in the space to position you in the way that they know will relate to their audience. But for some brands, that is a difficult step. There are more and more brands who are understanding that it is a step that they have to take, and they're increasingly investing significant amounts of money in the space in order to achieve that. So I truly think this is going to explode with non-endemic brands over the next 12 to 18 months. So I would say watch this space and really see what happens, because I think we've got exciting times ahead.
Love to hear what you have to say about that, Jonathan. What's coming in EA? What's the next big thing coming? What are the things that you can share or tease us with?
We're always looking at how we can expand and grow our burgeoning community in Apex. I work primarily on the game side. I don't necessarily represent our sports side, but each year, sports is a big deal for EA. And so we're always looking at how we can continue to grow that business. That's super broad, super bland, but that's things that won't get me in trouble. As much as people are going to comb through it once they see an EA person on this podcast. But I think for me, like if I can speak to an influencer and a creator partnership standpoint, the best thing about the games industry, like for me, is that with the switch to live service, and for those that don't understand or that don't know what the concept of live service is there's been a pivot in gaming where rather than just releasing a game in its entirety at one point and then leaving it as is, a lot of companies are moving to this model where they're releasing a game but then continually building on it. So they're releasing updates, they're releasing downloadable content that can be that basically expands on what the foundational experience is. And so what we're fortunate enough to see is that with a lot of these updates, they're basically opportunities to relaunch the game. And so we have all these new ways that we can experiment, adapt, and iterate our learnings, learn quickly, and improve on them on a 2 to 3 month basis. And to me, that's really cool because it means that we can experiment, iterate, and just iterate and innovate continually and repeatedly. And that's one of the things that I'm most excited about. Like the past 12 months, like I said earlier, the switch to digital really challenged a lot of us, but it forced us to grow and to evolve our partnerships. And with 2021, with all those learnings, like we're in a big planning phase right now. And by the time it gets to holiday, man, I really hope, I'm sorry to be crass here, but I really hope we can do some cool shit.
Well, I mean, let's look at what's happened to Netflix. I mean, that's just exploded, isn't it? And some of these technology platforms have done so well. And you know, and you can't help thinking that this is going to be what's happened over the last 12 months. His behavior has changed, and I think a lot of that will stick, even though all of us are dying to get back to a live event, and dying to, you know, meet friends and family and all the rest of it. But I think we've learned new experiences, and I think a lot of those will be here to stay. So you know, let's hope that we've got an exciting, robust gaming industry for the future.
I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
Absolutely. Lovely to speak to you today, and thank you so much, Kelvin and Jonathan, for sharing your time on this podcast.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you very much, Gordon. I appreciate it. It was great to chat.